I'm Thomas Andreasen. Thanks a lot for the intro, Gabby. It's been very interesting, and it's a great honor for me to talk here today, because we've always, in the last couple of years, attending Casual Connect from Playlab, we've always had these dramatic things happening at Casual Connect. A couple of years ago, we were showcasing Juice Cubes, which is our most successful title. 2 years ago, last year, due to Casual Connect, we actually ended up acquiring a company in the Philippines. So every year's been interesting stuff going on, and hopefully we'll have some equally interesting stuff happening this year at Casual Connect. So yeah, as Gabby mentioned, I'll be talking about how data changed user acquisition, very much from a perspective of our experiences and our kind of views throughout the last about 3 years. I'll go back and explain the whole process of how our views changed over time in regards to user acquisition. But first, I'll be talking a little bit about myself. Basically, this is my scoreboard. I've made it myself, so I grade myself that way. But my digital marketing skills come from really working from our mobile games and doing the user acquisition, doing the data analytics, and analyzing all the metrics, and that's where I look myself. I'm 27 years old. I've been 6 years in Bangkok now. I've got 5 out of 100 cats. The crazy cat person level goes at 6 cats, so I stick at 5. And marketing dollars allocated is about $3.5 million across all of our titles. A big part of that has been in regards of Juice Cubes, which I'll get into. A quick background story on Playlab. Last year, we grossed about $11 million in revenue across our games and titles. We got 25 million downloads across our titles, and we scaled up our company actually from about 20 people to 100 plus people now. And as I mentioned before, last year we acquired a studio in the Philippines, which has also helped on the head count of our company. We're registered in Bangkok, Singapore, Manila, and Hong Kong as well, and are looking more on the Southeast Asia region going forward. Quick pop quiz before we get started. I wanted to just show you some of the data, and this is some of the information that I wish I had 3 years ago. Looking back, we didn't have access to this data, so we were just playing around. But first question, how many of you guys are in mobile marketing? Hands, raise your hands. About 30% of people here. Okay, good. So this is a test we did, actually with some Facebook ads, more than 100,000 impressions, quite statistical significant data. Which one in terms of conversion rates or click-through rates would you guys think would perform the best? So I'll say A, and you can raise your hands if you believe it's the A version. I see about 8 or 9 people voting for that one. Okay, how many of you guys, there's a 50-50% chance you're right. So how many of you guys think it's B? Raise your hand. Okay, that's a big part of it. Almost 90% of the room think it's B would perform better. Any quick questions as to why you think B would perform better? Looks nice. Okay, well, I'll share the data with you. Actually, we found out it was the same audience we were targeting, that apparently the A version had a click-through rate of 3.62, the B version had a 2.8. So 90% of you were wrong in this case. And that's the information we have today, but 3 years ago we weren't tracking or looking at a lot of these values. The ultimate overall result of it was that CPI that's about 60% lower just from that one metric of changing the creative. Conclusions based on that was that share some love, make hearts. Female users in the US love that. So I'll go a little bit through the evolution as mentioned, if we look at how the evolution of humans happened, as well as the evolution of data and analytics and stuff, how it went from in 2012 being very much focused on incentivized installs, pushing things into the marketing, charting campaigns, into 2014, which was more about value buying, really using attribution tracking. CPI was a new thing that came with mobile. It hadn't been that much popular prior, so that was a new thing that all the advertising agencies were looking at. This year, it's more pay-per engagement, really focusing on the engagement of the users, so you track that point much later in the game. Video ads are booming, as Startup was mentioning in the session prior to this. And for us, it's focusing on the behavior and the predictive analytics this year, and then focusing more on, in 2016, these are my guesses and estimates, is really maximizing the lifetime value of users. And I'll dig more into some of these things in the following slides. So 2012, 2013, I want you to put up a kind of a case scenario. This is what we understood in 2012. We had basically no idea what was happening to users. We were like, a user is a user. We don't really care if it's female, male, download, monkey, whatever Chinese users, as long as this was the vision we had back then. And if we get it in the market and we get into the top ranks, we'll make billions. We'll be billionaires by the end of the month. That was our vision back then. So with those kind of mindsets, we were looking at all the other charts, the apps that were out there. You'd see them bump to the charts, get millions of downloads, and really we were like, these guys must be making a lot of money, because we didn't have any data on that. So real life example of that was in 2013. We were looking for volume of installs, primarily focusing on incentivized users. So we had made this game, Lost Cubes. We reached top 15 in US games. This was the first day on launch date. This is awesome. 0 to 80,000 downloads in a day. We're gonna dominate the world. We'll be known for this title for the rest of the years and everything else. So that's how it looked after the first 24 hours of launching Lost Cubes with that mindset in mind. What actually happened? We'd spent $40,000 in 16 hours, which was a lot of money for a small startup with 20 guys. Within a week, we dropped out of all the charts, and it took us 18 months to recoup the $40,000. So apparently the understandings that we had were wrong. They didn't fit into what actually was how the market responded to it. Yeah, so this was basically done with no testing, because of course we had made the best possible game there was out there, because we weren't tracking anything, we weren't using data to our advantage. So we learned from that. This was about 2013 when we had launched it. It was really about focusing on understanding our users better, analytics, and do a soft launch. Like, that was the prime thing. Don't just take your app, put it on the store, and pump a lot of money into marketing. Big no-go, because you don't know how it performs. In the game, you don't know what the response is, you don't know how users interact with your game. But with the understanding we had back then, that was the natural thing to do. Step 2 is focus on better media buying, better users in a sense. We realized that incentivized users have very little value. In 2012 and 13, charting was the biggest thing, so you just wanted to get in the charts, and then the organics would come automatically from there, which it did. We got a lot of downloads, but we never really monetized because we didn't have the analytics in there. And then the last lesson that we did from this experiment was we really needed to develop better monetizing games, because we realized we could drive 80,000 downloads in a day, but we couldn't monetize them with our Lost Cubes game. So we focused on the mobile game engine, which we're using now is Unity 3D, and we focused really on the monetization side. So those were lessons from that. Going forward to 2014, I'll skip a little bit because we actually launched Juice Cubes in late 2013 with Rovio Stars as a publisher for the game. So we were hitting 2014. This is another scenario, another day you have to put your mindset into. We were top 100 grossing Juice Cubes across a number of, I think, 60 different countries. We were making really good dough on it, so to say. You can try to look back on the first slides I had with how much revenue we were making. But it was looking really good and dandy and everything else. And we had learned from our prior experiences with Lost Cubes. So we had learned that value media buying is important. We need to buy from multiple media sources. We need to track things better. We need to know where our users are coming from. And this was a new thing, as mentioned before. CPI, cost per acquisition, cost per action within the game solutions were something that was new by the ad networks. So ad networks were at the same time still trying to figure out, this is a model that works really good for games, but we haven't really perfected the model because we've been used to selling everything on a CPM basis and a CPC basis. Another real life example. So we were kings, we were on top of the world, and we knew exactly what we were doing. We had launched the game, we had lots of millions of users in the game in the first couple of months. And then we started to sit down and think, we need a further user acquisition plan. We can't just continue to do user acquisition on a few channels. We need to test more channels. So we came up with a plan of focusing on about 15 different ad networks. And all of them were providing this new option called CPI, which we thought was great. So we trusted all of them that they would deliver quality and everything else. We'd just gotten a lot more detailed tracking into the game. So we had never really known 110% how the performance was of our users. We just knew that when we put $10,000 into marketing, more money would come back at us. But how the actual algorithms and everything else worked, we didn't really understand that to the core. But we realized we needed to push more to keep the users coming in. So we launched a campaign, spent a lot of money on that, and learned things very fast. I love when you Google gambling monkey on Google, you get this picture. It's just apparently there's other people who's made a meme about monkey losing and gambling losses. No. But basically, we found out that with this campaign, we had the plan. We started the campaigns, we ran them for a month, and we realized that we need to know the data before, because when we're spending a few $100,000, I think the campaign was about $250,000 in conjunction with Rovio, we were spending that over 30 days because we needed 30 days of data to figure out how does our users interact within the game. Not a good thing when you're spending $10,000 a day and you find out after 30 days that it's not working. Bad business. So this was the key lesson we learned from that, is we need to figure out how our users perform when we're doing advertising at a much earlier stage, to figure out, to really double down on the sources of users that are good, and the ones that are bad, we cut them off straight off the bat instead of running it for another 27 days. So we learned from that more things. Return on investment, lifetime value were some of the things we started looking at, really looking at more granular at the cost per install, always being lower than our lifetime value per media source, not just a user being an any user. Now we were starting to focus a lot more on quality users, and back then we didn't look at the actual value of it, but from this lessons we started focusing on really on the quality users. As everybody, as you all know, it's a small percentage of our users that pay. That's the small percentage that we really want to do advertising towards to get them into the games, as well as viral users. And we also realized, because the cost in 2014, really the CPIs took across the globe took a huge jump, that it's not just making games anymore. It's also building all the surrounding stuff, the tools, the microservices, the community manage, mediation tools for advertising, as the prior session was very much focusing about. Integrating with Facebook, adding more virality. A lot of those things started mattering more because it wasn't just the game. We needed to maximize our ROI, which comes from more values out of the users. So flash forward to 2015. These are some of the challenges that indie developers are facing today, as we see the market. We've got increasing CPIs. If you're a small indie developer, 5, 10, maybe 15 guys, you can hardly afford quality assurance, having 10 testers sitting on your game, sorting out all the kinks. This is what the big guys do, what we do across all of our things. You probably don't have a couple of $1 million to spend on marketing, which you need to get the visibility in the stores, especially these days, with a much bigger percentage of users coming from user acquisition than from organics and the app stores. You will probably also have problems with cross-platform development, payment gateways. Basically, if you're an indie developer, the trouble is getting the actual scale on it and taking it from just being a minor success to a global success. Because we've been through a lot of these things, and over the course of years, we've developed our own tools, our own SDK integrations, our own Playlab SDK. We have a lot of these services that help indie developers with it, with a lot of these challenges in it. So this was some of the understandings that we're looking at now. So this is just going to be a small section about Playlab and what we do. We're actually helping out indie developers take their games to the next level through a number of all these things, anything from user experience testing of actual users to optimizing their servers to scale to several million daily active users, to handling the community management, the support funnels, all those microservices around is what we can support indie developers with. And Infinity Levels is actually our first co-production or a late-stage accelerator deal we did. We signed them up last year, and Nikki's here as well. She was on a panel earlier. It's really about when we kind of crossed paths. I think it's about 2 years ago at Casual Connect, actually, and I think they realized that they needed some scale on the company, and we could help them with that, with the experiences that we've been through and a lot of the tools and services. So we signed a co-production deal with them last year, and it's coming out on the stores very soon. Flash forward to my beliefs of 2016. I think it's going to get much more granular in how we approach users and focusing much more on the user experience from the user's point of view, and making an adapted gameplay and balancing of the game for that specific user, depending if it's a whale or if it's a data scientist that's playing the game or if it's your mom. They still need both of them to be challenged by the game. And that's where we can see where we will, if they both feel challenged and frustrated with the games, we'll be able to monetize both of them through in-app purchases and really segmenting the user and creating a more individual experience for the users. And a lot of that information to make those assumptions comes from big data. So what we have is we have a data warehousing system. We have ETL pipelines which connect to a number of different sources where we track information about the users and then process it, and then we can basically create an individual experience for the user within the game based on how they perform within the game. And that way we can continue to mitigate the risk of increasing CPIs, because we continually need to increase the value of our users to kind of fit that level to continue with our business model in that sense. Other parts is going to be programmatic bidding, where we set up automatic systems that value the quality of users from certain sources at a certain price through our own algorithms, and then automatically bidding at those ad exchanges. And those are some of the things that I believe a lot of other big companies are working on, but as an indie developer, these are some heavy tasks to take upon when you're just building games to the market and pushing those to the market. So that's my beliefs of what's coming in the next couple of years. Any questions?
Hi. Just wanted to check, how are you supporting the indie developer that you are, you are co-publishing and you are doing a deal with them? Is it, and I see that the negotiation started last year.
Yeah.
And it's almost a year now. How are you supporting the indie developer in developing that game? Is there any monetary? Is there a MG, or is there any kind of money that you have given them to create the game, or is it just you are going to do the marketing?
Yes, very good question. So it's how did we structure the deal with Infinity Levels on co-development? So the deal was made and signed relatively fast. We did do a minimum guarantee just short of $100,000 or something, just short of that, not completely, which was just to kind of support them going forward, the developing on the game, because as we come in, we have a different perspective of the games than indie developers do. So when an indie developer, because we've been there, we know it takes a lot of resources, but when you think, or when an indie developer thinks their game is ready for the market, that's when we say, hold your horses. Let's put in analytics, let's get some data in there, let's balancing out the economy, let's get more features put in there, let's really get it ready for the market before we push it out globally. We always recommend pushing it out soft launch and get the early data from your users. So that's something that we help with, is the continual marketing push of that, helping with the analytics, helping with actual development, so cross-platform. In the case of Infinity Levels, the whole Android version was basically built at our Philippine studio. The whole team of Infinity Levels actually moved into our offices and have a whole table down at the end of our, as part of our office. Because it's not in the old style of publishing of what we want to do. We want to be much more hands-on with the developers and give them basically complete transparency of how we do everything across our own internal titles. Because with that information, the indie developer can make much better decisions. I'm not saying all acceleration deals we do with indie developers is going to be moving to our office in Bangkok or Philippines, but it's an option because we like that close communication. So you see the lessons that we do across our other 5 titles, that you can use them and you can work closely with our backend team on scaling your backend so it can support the millions of users, make sure we get the right pipelines set up. And a lot of that really close communication needs to be there to create successful titles. We've been through it. We published with Rovio. There's a very long distance, and communication with them is very difficult. So having something nearby and close by where you can really work with it to get a quality product into the market is the key. And as on top of the whole deal itself, we did a $2 million marketing commitment as long as the user acquisition is profitable. And that's another thing that, as indie developers, we've been through it. Very few have access to that amount of funds for marketing. So that was just some of the things.
So I have a question for you, Thomas. So
Okay.
what does a soft launch plan look like for your games at Playlab?
Yeah, good question. Soft launch plans for our games is basically we get it into a market. Normally we pick a market that we're in ourselves, so it's Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, maybe Indonesia, sometimes Singapore, and when we really test out the retention and the funnels of the game, where do our users drop off at? And we get all the data from our users, how much session times it's being, we track all the engagement within the app to really benchmark it across our other titles to see how is it performing, and where do we believe that, what features do we believe that will help the most on the metrics that we're seeing is not working in the game. So that's the first step, is really organizing out the retention of the game. And then the second step is the monetization, and that's where we move into more established and more mature markets, such as Australia or Canada, for additional testing to make sure we have the right purchase points, we have the right conversion funnels for converting free users to paying users within the game.
Hi, Thomas. Just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how your analytics differ from different types of games. So perhaps comparing a more casual puzzle game versus a more mid-core game. Do your analytics change at all between different types of games, really?
Good question on how our analytics change from one genre to another genre. So all of our internal titles are social casual games, puzzle games in the match 3 space. Our first co-development here is a mid-core title, racing title, which is resource management, two completely different genres, but you're still tracking it's different things. So one of the things we've built is an events collector that tracks our, so that we can use ourselves within the game. So you can really granularly test out how many times does a user buy this thing compared to the other things, or how many times does a certain segment of users that, for example, played more than 10 sessions, how do they perform compared to users that have only played 5 sessions from it. So that's really where you need to go really granular on it and create an experience that is optimal for the user. And it's the same things we're balancing, whether it's a match 3 game or it's an economy. You look at the input and output. So the input in an economy can be soft currency, it can be hard currency, it can be time, for example. Where do you get more time, and where do you spend that time? So it's basically like a financial projections on every single thing within your game. What's the income, what's the expense of those things? And so the mindset is very similar to how I approach it, at least, whatever type of game it is. But going granular on retention, it basically has, the ultimate goal is to have a game that performs where we can do massive advertising or advertising at scale with a CPI that's lower than our lifetime value. So whether the conversions is lower or the numbers are different, that all depends on that specific game. But that's the ultimate funnel we want to build. So we can buy millions of users, and we can help the indie developers do that and be profitable doing it.